China's tightening grip on tungsten exports has exposed a critical fault line in global supply chains. Tungsten powers everything from missiles to semiconductors, and Beijing's new controls come just as trade tensions with the US escalate. Now the spotlight shifts to players outside China, and few are more closely watched than Almonty Industries. The company is ramping up a major project in South Korea, re-domiciling to the US and positioning itself as a strategic supplier to American defense and tech sectors. Lewis Black, CEO of Almonty Industries, joins us now. Lewis, thanks very much indeed for your time.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Let's start with the basics here, right? I mean, if 80% of the world's tungsten comes from China, how serious is the threat to Western industries now that Beijing has tightened export controls?
Well, actually, I hate to correct you, but it's actually worse than that. 90% of the world's tungsten flows through China because it's also produced by Russia and North Korea. And obviously, since the Ukrainian war, Russia can no longer push their material via the EU. So now China has become the de facto controller of all things. So it's actually worse than originally was contemplated.
You've promoted Sangdong in South Korea as the world's next major tungsten source. But how quickly and realistically, can it fill the void left by China? What's the timeline to meaningful output here?
Well, we opened in about 2 months. So we've been building for some years. Remember, we bought this in 2015. So it's 10 years, which is the usual cycle of building mines in democracies, 8 to 10 years. We're at the lower end of it. I would have liked to have been closer to 8, but I'm closer to 10. And we can't fill 90% of the world's production. That's just not possible. But what we do have, of course, is we have an enormous advantage in that we are the only real sizable project that's coming online, that will be online at least for another decade. And we are in a safe jurisdiction, in a real democracy. And I think for our customers, we offer an enormous competitive advantage for them in that they can protect and perhaps also increase their market share because of our supply. And given our track record in this, we've done this for a long time. We've been around in this sector for a long, long time. We're essentially the last man standing. So we can't fill the void, but we are having a meaningful impact on it.
You've announced re-domiciling to the United States and a partnership with a powerful Washington lobbying firm. Are these moves more about geopolitics than production? And what concrete investor returns do they bring?
Well, 8-9 months ago, we were a tungsten mining company that was going to be the primary. We already produce out of Portugal, but the primary source for the car space, the aerospace space, the medical, semiconductors. That was what we did. And then the world changed. And suddenly people realized, or governments acknowledged, that militarily they've neglected an entire defense space for the best parts, really since the end of the Cold War. They have no munitions. They have no armaments. Tungsten has always been a defense metal. And we started fielding calls from all kinds of different suitors that we hadn't ever dealt with before. And it was all defense related. So our alignment in the US is, I'm an American despite my accent. I built this business essentially with American capital. 85% of our material comes into the US. And we are seeking sanctuary while we decide how best to satisfy South Korea, Europe, and the US in their defense needs in regard to tungsten. So it's really to take a deep breath. We're working with ADI, the US largest defense lobbyist. The only other mine they carry is Mountain Pass. All the rest are just traditional defense contractors. We were actually interviewed by them. I thought I was interviewing them. They interviewed me. And I think we are using this as a moment to do the right thing. We have the ability to solve a huge problem. We just want to make sure that it's done in a fair and equitable way.
About that, Lewis, given the subdued downstream demand and Chinese stockpiling, are you confident the market will stay tight, or are we looking at a short-term hype cycle?
Well, I think if you look at antimony, which had an export ban placed upon it in October, and no export permits of any meaning have been granted since then, I don't think tungsten's going to be any different. The difference is, of course, there are alternative antimony projects globally. In tungsten, there are not. So this presents a very unusual situation. It is a scarce resource. It's in decline in regards to reserves, especially in China. Prices continue to elevate. There are no new projects coming online anytime soon, and those that are even being contemplated are much, much smaller than are required and needed. I think basically we face uncharted waters. Nobody really knows how this is going to play out. But right now, you cannot produce munitions or armor without the permission of North Korea, China, and Russia, because they provide 90% of the raw materials to do so.
Now, it's interesting, early on, you mentioned that you were literally the last man standing, but I look at Australia's EQ Resources, for example, just signing a $124 million in offtake deals, filling containers while, Shandong is still gearing up. Are you concerned about losing first mover advantage here in the non-China supply space?
No, we're not. I mean, I'd rather not comment on the opposition, but I think the market has spoken. I think the market's clearly assigned where they believe the future lies. I think we are 8 to 9 times more valuable than EQ. And my question really is this: management track record are absolutely key. If you look at our space, every tungsten mine except the ones we've owned have failed because processing is the cornerstone of tungsten mining. Knowledge, experience. And I think the market has essentially looked at us, and there's a reason why KfW IPEX, the tier 1 project finance lender on the planet, has chosen one tungsten project in their history to support. That's ours. Why the Austrian government's involved, the South Korean government, multiple governments have got behind what we're doing here. We have the only hard floor contracts in the sector. I mean, we have offtakes where we have guaranteed income if the prices collapse by China. We've been afforded these privileges by our market because of our position in it and because of our track record. I think it's unfair to comment on competitors, to be honest.
Your company has multiple sites in Spain, Portugal, Korea, but investors may ask, is Almonty spreading itself too thin while Shandong is still unproven at scale?
Well, it's not unproven in scale because it operated for 40 years as the world's largest tungsten mine before it closed in 93. So we're not reinventing the wheel here. We're really just reinvigorating a mine that was already the world's largest. So there's no mystery. This is not upscaling it. In fact, in many ways, we're producing less than they produced back in the day. I think in terms of spreading ourselves too thin, Portugal has been running for 136 years. It's a well-oiled machine. It's something which produces, we receive a more than 25% premium to market price for that material because it's so coveted. It's so desirable. We have the highest level of recovery for any gravity plant in tungsten. We produce the cleanest material, the most homogeneous out of that project. It's like an old pair of shoes. She's old, she's a bit cranky, and her grade is not what it used to be, but it makes money. And that's the key for any investor. Do your mines make money? And I've always said, if we can make money in Portugal at 0.14 grade, what are we going to be able to do with an underground project in Korea with almost 5 times that grade, which is sparkling, brand spanking new? So no, I think we have the right balance. We have the projects that we feel can provide solutions to our customers in Europe and South Korea and the US. I think we have the scalability, and I think that's the most important.
Lewis, as a wrap up, with tungsten now seen as a strategic material, are you in talks with US or allied governments for funding or offtake guarantees?
Well, obviously I can't say whether we are or not because I'm probably in breach of all kinds of rules and regulations. But let me put it to you this way. If you have the biggest tungsten mine that's around and it's due to open imminently, it's already been supported by multiple governments. You've had people like General Perner join our board who, of course, are way above our pay grade as such. We have ADI, the US largest defense lobbyist, joining our organization. I think it's highly unlikely that we won't.
Oh, well, fair enough. Well, thanks very much. Very insightful on where we are with tungsten at the moment. Lewis Black is the CEO of Almonty Industries. Lewis, thanks very much indeed for your time.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.